Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channels. We try to build this thing up. Green Bay, a little late to the party on this one, but the Packers agreeing to a deal with Mecole Hardman, wide receiver formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs. Expect a short-term deal that has been worked out between Hardman and Green Bay. This didn't move the needle for me, and I wasn't mad about the signing in any fashion, but when I saw the news, I didn't stand up. I didn't pace around in excitement. It was just like, okay, the Packers got Mecole Hardman. Like, there wasn't intrigue in this signing for me, or a whole hell of a lot of it. And I know this isn't a great way to to start the video, but we'll get into some intriguing portions of it, I guess. But just at its base, like the signing, I was like, whatever. Like when they signed Hobbs, I was like, ooh, interesting. Corner, can play some slot, maybe plays the outside. How does he pencil in? Where does he fit in with Keyshawn, Nixon, Carrington, Valentine, assuming that Jair's out of the picture? When they signed Aaron Banks over from San Francisco, you look at his snap count total, and he's played every single snap in the NFL except I think it was 5 or 6 at left guard. So you're like, okay, he's left guard. That is your left guard for the future. And he doesn't have versatility like a lot of these guys the Packers typically prefer with their offensive line. So you realize the intrigue is Banks is going to slot in at left guard, so Elton probably slides over to center. You keep Tom at right tackle and Sean Ryan at right guard. This move was just like, we already know everything we need to know about Mecole Hardman, how he's going to fit. He's a good wide receiver. I'm not like, meh, but it didn't move the needle. It didn't move the needle. We also have to recognize where we're at in free agency. Like, the big waves are done outside of trades. Like, that could pop up out of nowhere. Like, and wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, right? Like, that's the big domino that everyone's following right now. And I guess at corner, Asante Samuel Jr. is an interesting name to keep tabs on too. But like these big waves, these big moves, you look at the wide receivers that are left, and there's warts with all of them. Like Stephon Diggs is coming off a torn ACL. Keenan Allen looked pretty old for Chicago last year. You know, the gas tank's close to running on E with him. You're not going to get some superstar signing with who's left on the market. The big splash guys at wide receiver are gone, and it really wasn't a full market to begin with. Once T. Higgins went back to Cincinnati and Chris Godwin went back to Tampa Bay, you saw the DK Metcalf trade. Devontae goes from the Jets, getting snipped there. All the way over to the West Coast where he wanted to go, back to the West Coast with the Los Angeles Rams. And so I think that's part of it. Like, we all need, and myself included, we have to realize where we're at in free agency. Like, Mecole Hardman doesn't move the needle, but any wide receiver they really get at this stage, if it's via free agency, not trade or the draft, isn't going to be much of a needle mover. The part that bothers me about this signing is I've seen way too many people on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I've seen way too many people say, hey, this is the guy that can take the lid off of defense. Green Bay needed a vertical threat. Mecole Hardman's the placeholder for Christian Watson until he gets back. I don't know if Mecole Hardman will even like make the roster. Like, I don't think that's a certainty just because of this signing. And so to stretch it out like I've seen some people do, and I like the optimism, right? But to say that Mecole Hardman is going to be the placeholder for Christian Watson to me is pretty foolish. It, like, putting Hardman with where he's at in his career and the numbers and the production, putting him on the same level as Christian Watson is like, it's like eating Pizza Hut and calling it a New York slice. Like, we're not stupid. No, it's not. They are entirely different. And that's not a knock against Mecole Hardman. And quite frankly, it's not his fault that some Packers fans are categorizing it this way. But I have seen a lot of people say, boom, there it is. You know, not a flashy signing, not a big signing, but that's our placeholder for Christian Watson. I'm like, I don't see it that way. And the other part that's bothering me is Mecole Hardman has blazing speed. He is fast. There's no one doubting that. Go look at the 40 time. Go look at his top speeds off certain catches. Certainly not in last year, but in recent years when he was with Kansas City. But people talking about how he's some like certified proven deep threat. He has burners, yes. But you have to look at how the Chiefs used him last year. 12 games played last year, Mecole Hardman had 12 receptions. That's not going to light up any stat book, at least not in a promising way. Out of those 12 receptions, that's all he had in 12 games last year. And kind of alarmingly, You're talking about a Kansas City team that doesn't have a whole lot of star power at wide receiver. Like, they were searching for answers. Like, they bring back Juju Smith-Schuster. They acquire DeAndre Hopkins. They draft Xavier Worthy. Like, they're trying to make these moves. They bring in Hollywood Brown, who missed the first part of the season. Like, there were opportunities to be had with this wide receiver group. Mecole Hardman didn't really grab onto any of those opportunities. And he didn't have a lot of opportunities, right? He only had 14 targets in 12 games. Like, you talk about the receptions, and you're like, well, how many times did they target him? 14 in 12 games. It's just not a lot. But when people are talking about him being like some certified, proven deep threat with where he's at in his career, that's not necessarily the case. 12 receptions last year, folks. Not one of those, not in any of those 12 receptions, did the ball thrown by Patrick Mahomes travel more than 10 yards down the field. Like, Hardman's 12 catches, think about these two numbers. Hardman's 12 catches traveled a total of -9 yards in the air. And you might be thinking, like, what the hell? How is that possible? Well, think about where the line of scrimmage is. Think about if you go back and watch some of these catches, it's a pop pass, right? It's a jet touch pass, a little pop pass, and those come behind the line of scrimmage. And so for all these people saying he's a deep threat, that's the guy that he'll keep a secondary honest. I don't know. I don't see it that way. He's fast, yes. And whether it's the route tree not developing the way they would have hoped, whether it's, the size, I can't really factor in like the height, right? Because he's a smaller receiver, because Tyreek Hill is a true vertical threat, and he's not the tallest guy either. So I don't know what it is, but the Chiefs didn't want to use him as a deep threat really in any facet. 12 receptions last year. And when you bundle those all together, they traveled a total of -9 yards in the air. And Mecole Hardman's average depth of target, now we're talking all 14 targets, the average depth of his targets was -1 yard. Everything was quick hitter, right around the line of scrimmage, jet touch pass. I don't remember seeing him in orbit motion at all, but maybe there was some of that mixed in there as well. Point being, I'm not mad about the Mecole Hardman signing. Doesn't move the needle, didn't excite me in the slightest. But to see people out there saying like, yep, there's our deep threat. I don't know. He's fast, but there's a lot of fast wide receivers in the NFL. And on the flip side of that, there's a lot of fast corners and safeties in the NFL. The Chiefs didn't use him as a deep threat. There has to be a reason for that, right? Because his sample size is limited. They didn't target him a lot, but you would think if this guy's some, bona fide vertical threat down the field, that they would have used him in that fashion at least a few times. They didn't. I'm telling you, there was a video, someone spliced it up, put it on the X timeline. I saw all 12 receptions for Mecole Hardman last year. Not one of them did the ball travel more than 10 yards down the field. And the numbers speak for that. Pro Football Reference. -9 yards of air travel time in his 12 receptions, average depth of target, -1 yard. He wasn't used downfield at all. And so I am not going to sit back and listen to people who are like, found our deep threat, right? Yep, got him. Until Watson gets back, there's our deep. Like, no, I don't see it that way. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciate all the support. There are positives to this, I guess. Like, if you really want to scratch and claw for it, I found two. I do think they matter in a sense, especially when you consider what the Packers have working in the return department, and then what Matt LaFleur's scheme kind of looks like, how guys thrive, what kind of positions he likes to have them in out on the field. So of Mecole Hardman's 12 receptions, 10 of them came with him in pre-snap motion. And we know how much LaFleur likes using pre-snap motion. Try to diagnose what a defense is showing you. Try to keep them guessing as well. And typically for Green Bay, they'll do it with Watson, maybe Wicks once in a while, and Dobbs, but the primary guy in that pre-snap motion for Green Bay is Jayden Reed. And so if Mecole Hardman makes the roster, if he's out on the field come next September for the regular season, and he gets 15 to 20 snaps a game, I don't even, like, we're not speaking in absolutes, right? There's a long way to go. But in terms of like, hey, guys that Matt LaFleur likes to use in his scheme, it's guys that, you can put in pre-snap motion, you can get the ball to them quickly, and then sort of let them get busy, right? Like, just get the ball in Mecole Hardman's hands. He is fast. I'm granting you that. and just see what he can do. And that's what the Chiefs tried doing with his 12 receptions, 14 targets last year. It was don't get cute with it. Just put the ball in his hands right away. Quick screens, jet motion, touch passes, things of that nature, and just let him try to orchestrate. Let him try to get shifty with it. And so that is a plus for him. 12 receptions, 10 of them came with him being the receiver in pre-snap motion and being the direct target, sort of the one option on those plays for Patrick Mahomes. The other part of it is the return game. I think it's a fascinating topic to have. We can have it throughout the offseason at different junctures as we find out more, but you had Keyshawn Nixon, your cornerback, at the end of the year saying he doesn't want to return anymore. He doesn't want to return kicks anymore. And I don't know if that was a sour taste in his mouth after fumbling the opening kickoff to start the playoff game against Philadelphia where he got decked. It also looked like he recovered it, but the officials were blind. They said, no, not gonna rehash that wound, though. But Keyshawn Nixon saying he doesn't want to return anymore, I thought was interesting. Mecole Hardman returned kicks at times last year for Kansas City. He had 12 punt returns and 5 kick returns. I think those were the numbers. 12 punt, 5 kick returns. It might have been 11 punts and 5 kick returns. But he does give you that versatility. Like we know, whether it's offensive line, a corner that can play slot on the outside, someone like Javon Bullard who can play true safety or come down closer to the line of the scrimmage and play slot. Green Bay loves its players, not at a particular position, really across the board, who offer you versatility. If it's a running back, we like a guy that can run between the tackles but also be a receiving back out of the backfield. And Josh Jacobs sort of developed that throughout his first year in Green Bay and was used a lot more in the passing game with the Packers than he ever was with the Raiders. So Mecole Hardman offers you versatility in that, yeah, he's a wide receiver, but he can also be a return man. And it might sound sort of just like not important, but when your kick returner and Keyshawn Nixon is saying, I don't want to return kicks anymore, that has to be addressed. And if that wish is granted, like someone has to fill the role. And I know kick returns have kind of been watered down, and the NFL tried revamping that with these rule changes, and teams are still like, we'll just kick it out of the back of the end zone for a touchback. We're willing to give the ball to the opponent at the 30-yard line instead of the 25, whatever. And so, the kick return, it's almost becoming like an obsolete play in the National Football League. But you still have to fill that role, and Mecole Hardman can do that. Also with punt returns, I mentioned he had 11 or 12 punt returns last year. Jayden Reed was the primary punt returner for Green Bay, not Keyshawn Nixon. This actually is where I kind of like the Mecole Hardman fit. It's not necessarily at wide receiver as a guy who's going to be a vertical threat for Green Bay. That's not how he was used at all in Kansas City. And again, there just had to be a reason for that. I don't know what the reason was. But the punt return aspect is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, he can fill that void. Two, well, why would he need to when you have Jayden Reed? Jayden Reed's been a pretty damn good wide receiver for Green Bay. He hasn't really taken the punt returner gig by the horns and ran with it. In fact, there's been a couple of muffs, couple of misreads, struggles. He hasn't been terrible by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not what we expected when they put him back there as a rookie out of Michigan State and then in his second year last season. Secondarily, I think, we don't know the exact amount of time that Jayden Reed spends at practice day in and day out working on his punt return game. And I think for a team that could desperately use more production at wide receiver, and I'll use that word consistent that I use in a lot of videos when talking about this wide receiver group, for a team that's desperately looking for more consistency at wide receiver, I think being able to allocate even more time for Jayden Reed to focus in on really carving out his role as a solid wide receiver is valuable. It's more important than having him return punts or work on his punt return game. So even if it's 15, 20 minutes, I don't know the numbers, but whatever time he's spending at punt return in practice, because it has to be practiced, if you can shift that to where it's just Jayden Reed, we just want you to focus on being a wide receiver. We've got Mecole Hardman this year. He'll be our punt returner. I think that could have a lot of value. Like being able to slot in Mecole Hardman as the punt returner and telling Jayden Reed, like, we really need you to be a damn good wide receiver. Focus all your time on that. To me, there's value in adding Mecole Hardman from that perspective. But again, like, I'm not going to call this anything it's not. Don't twist it up. Like, there's no way. I'm just laughing at, like, the visual of this. Like, there's no way after they agreed to a deal with Mecole Hardman, like, Goody's walking around the building like, hey, we got him. We got our guy. These wide receiver problems, these depth issues. We're going to miss Watson for a large portion of 2025. We figured it out, man. Mecole Hardman, like, There's no way Goody's doing that. Like, this signing does not change. It shouldn't. My God, it should not. And it's not a knock on Mecole Hardman, but this signing should not change Green Bay's perspective on how they want to handle the draft. Or I guess if you want to say the rest of free agency, again, the names it's slim pickings. But this signing does not change how Green Bay should visualize the wide receiver room, or it shouldn't have them pivoting off believing that, hey, we don't really need to emphasize wide receiver now in the draft. And they're smart enough to know that. I just picturing Goody like, whew, one less problem to worry about. Everyone wanted us to get a wide receiver this offseason. We got Mecole Hardman. Like, hey, bring him in. I'm glad someone was going to pick him up. I think it's very unrealistic to expect him to be the placeholder for Christian Watson, who takes up a lot of your snaps in a good way. Like, we're glad he does when he's on the field and when he's healthy. Christian Watson's a pretty big part of the offense when he's available, healthy, and on the field. Mecole Hardman's not going to have that role. He's not. He's not going to be getting like 80% of the snaps. It's a vertical threat for the Packers. So we'll have to see how they use him. Had to react to the signing, to the agreed deal. Just didn't move the needle. But I guess the one thing I'm really honing in on is if you can tell Jaden Reed, we don't want you worrying about being a punt return anymore. Put all your energy, all your time, all your focus into being a wide receiver and elevate your game there. We'll have Mecole return punts. I'm cool with it. Like I'm fine with it through that perspective. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Always, always, always appreciate all the support. Please click the subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds to do it. Bottom right corner of your screen. And we'll see you next time.